up this our Tupaya talk and the slideshow. Okay, is it all dark on your side? Okay, now what do you guys see? Do you see two slides?
I don't see anything, any slide.
Yeah.
You don't see any slide?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, that's not working. Swap displays. How about that? Let's try that. Now do you see it?
No.
No, guys don't see
Did
any.
you share screen or?
I thought I was. Oh boy. I'm recording. Sorry, guys. And show. Okay, what can you see now?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Let's see now. We try share screen. And here. And there. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, we're full screen. Wow.
Okay. Did it go black? How's that?
No, we're seeing your side of it. You have to switch sides.
I have to swap displays.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Can you see only one slide? I mean, only, or do all the slideshow?
No, just the one slide. Yeah.
Oh, hallelujah. Okay. All right, Kalani, we can go live.
Yep. Okay. Doors are open.
Okay. Aloha mai kako. Okay, ya o Lilikalā, Kameʻeleihiwa, aloha. We're just waiting for everyone to come in and we're going to start our webinar. We've been gone for 5 weeks, having a wonderful Christmas break and New Year's break. And now we're coming back for our wonderful brand webinars. And we've got a really great surprise for most of you. We had sent out that Hironui was talking about Tupaya tonight, and he is. And he's being joined by our friend Tua Pittman. So isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Karana.
Good, Anna. Okay. Let's see. So can we see anybody? Let's see. Maka, are you covering the Facebook? Okay. And Kalani, can you see the chat that's coming in from the Zoom?
Yep.
Great. Okay, folks, so if you're now coming in, joining us for the webinar, please put into the chat your name and where you're from so we can honor you for coming. And I'm going to, while we're waiting for all of you guys to come in, I am going to play for you our wonderful Whakarava Skies. It was filmed by Hironui Bouit. Let's see. And do you see something about software on the screen right now, guys?
No.
Well, is that there? No?
No.
Nope, don't see anything? Okay. This machine is not working too well for me today. I'm not sure. All right, let me try to move us on to the next one. Moving, stuck. My mouse isn't working. Okay, guys, just come on in anyway. We're going to figure this out because, you know, technology is our friend. Right, here we go. Okay, can everybody see the Whakarava Skies? Let's watch this for a minute. I love this because of the stars. Oh, is that it? It ended? Oh, yeah. Okay. We're moving on, zipping along. Oh, come on. No, we're zipping along. Aloha kako. Today is January 27, 2021. It is our wonderful Wednesday night webinars, our Brent webinars. And we're so happy to welcome you. Tonight we have joining Hironui talking about Tupaya, the famous Raʻiatean navigator who taught Captain Cook how to find islands. We're joined by Teuatakiri, Pittman, who is a pole navigator, and he's going to help tell us the story about Tupaya. So, Hironui, Tomanawa.
Good. Yorana tatopa atua. I'm just honored to be able to present and, of course, translate. Just really happy to be able to share some of the knowledge we've acquired according to Tupaya. And so I'll be speaking in English and then translating, I guess, myself in French, right, shortly after. And then I'm really happy to have our pole navigator, Pittman, with us. I've asked him to join us just because he's a master navigator, and hopefully he'll give some insight on a Polynesian way of navigating. And I think that's the most important hopefully tonight we'll learn about. Tupaya, alors je veux bien sûr parler en français, très honoré d'être là ce soir. En anglais, français en tant que présentateur, mais voilà, l'occasion de pouvoir partager un peu les connaissances que nous avons acquis concernant bien sûr le navigateur Tupaya. Dans le titre, on voit que c'est grâce à Tupaya, on pourrait dire que le capitaine Cook a pu peut-être certainement trouver pas mal des îles que nous retrouvons dans le Pacifique. Et on a bien sûr d'avoir le navigateur, le pole navigateur Pittman, qui est bien sûr originaire de Tahiti, des îles Cook, et qui va nous apporter sa perspective, son point de vue au niveau de la navigation traditionnelle de nos ancêtres et peut-être apporter une lumière concernant bien sûr Tupaya. So we can move on to the first slide. And once again, the title, of course, is Tupaya. And this is where we before we start talking and before we start sharing, we of course pay homage. And this, I'll give it to you, Lilikalā. Alors, avant de commencer notre présentation, bien sûr, nous allons bien sûr rendre hommage à nos ancêtres et bien sûr à nos traditions culturelles.
Aloha kako I nā hoa hanau me nā hoa aloha o moana nui a kea. Mai ka piina ka lā ma mauna te rapa nui a ka nāpo ana ka lā ma te tai o re hua o Aotearoa. Aloha. Aloha to all of our cousins and friends of the Polynesian Triangle, from the rising of the sun in the east at Mauna Tea o Rapa Nui, and to the setting of the sun in the west in the sea of Rehua of Aotearoa. Aloha.
Alors encore une fois, une bonne soirée à tout le monde. Bienvenue dans cet épisode. Encore, nous voulons bien sûr souhaiter la bienvenue à tous nos amis, nos cousins du triangle polynésien, à l'est de Rapa Nui sur le Manga Teatea, jusqu'à l'ouest dans la mer de Rehua, à Aotearoa, et bien sûr au nord, Hawaï. Et nous sommes ici au centre. Moi, je suis ici à Tahiti.
Oui. Of course, I am Lilikalā, Kameʻeleihiwa of Oahu, your branch chair and host of our weekly Wednesday night Polynesian Ancestor webinar. And I am joined by our most excellent French translator, Johan Hironui Bouit of Tahiti, who is a great Tahitian filmmaker from the land of Maohi Nui. And together we welcome all of our cousins and friends from Hawaii, Tahiti, Aotearoa, Tonga, Samoa, Kukiairani, Australs, Tuamotu, Marquesas, Rapa Nui, and even from France and even from Japan.
Alors, juste pour la présentation, Lilikalā, qui est le professeur docteur Lilikalā. Elle est originaire de Oahu, c'est l'île principale dans l'archipel des îles Hawaï. Elle est également présidente, on pourrait dire, du centre d'études comparatives polynésiennes. Et comme tous les mercredis soirs là, que nous débutons cette année, nous, bien sûr, je suis là pour traduire les présentations. Ce soir, je présenterai un peu. Et moi, je suis bien sûr originaire de Tahiti. Et voilà, et nous voulons bien sûr souhaiter la bienvenue à tous nos cousins de Hawaï, bien sûr, de Tahiti, de Tonga, de toutes les îles du Pacifique, mais également de nos amis en Europe et aussi aux États-Unis et au Japon, bien sûr. Alors, bienvenue à tous.
Okay, Makai. And tonight we are joined by Teuatakiri, Teuatakiri Tua. We call him Tua because his formal name is Teuatakiri. But Tua Pittman is from Kukiairani, and right now he's living in Auckland, in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So this is where he's coming in from, this little area right over here. Okay. So,
alors, encore bien sûr, nous voulons souhaiter la bienvenue à notre invité ce soir, Tua. Il s'appelle Teuatakiri Pittman. Il est originaire de Rarotonga, des îles Cook. Et ce soir, il nous rejoint de la ville de Auckland en Nouvelle-Zélande. Yorana.
Now, before we begin the discussion of Polynesian ancestral knowledge, I would like to thank and honor Gladys Kamakakuokalani Brandt, for whom our Center for Hawaiian Studies, KCHS, is named. It was her vision and her bequest to the Brandt Fund at the UH Foundation that allows us to support the work of the Brandt Chair for Comparative Polynesian Studies. I have a special oli to dedicate to Auntie Gladys, to my mom, Catherine Leilani Lee, to Po Navigator, to a Pittman, Kuki Airani, and to Hironui Bouit, Tahitian filmmaker, who both will be presenting tonight on Tupaya, the famous Raʻiatean navigator who taught Captain Cook how to find islands.
Alors, encore avant de commencer notre discussion, nous avons bien sûr de rendre hommage à Gladys Kamakakuokalani Brandt. Sans elle, bien sûr, ce webinaire, ces séries d'épisodes sur les connaissances ancestrales n'auront pas lieu. Bien sûr, le Centre des études hawaïennes de l'Université de Hawaï est nommé après elle. Et bien sûr, grâce à la fondation qu'elle a mis en place, nous avons bien sûr le Centre des études comparatives polynésiennes, dont bien sûr Dr Lilikalā est bien sûr présidente, chair, ce qu'on appelle ça. Alors, elle va faire un chant traditionnel qu'elle va dédier à Auntie Gladys, et bien sur sa mère, qui s'appelle Catherine Leilani Lee. Bien sûr, à notre invité, le co-navigateur Tua Pittman, et bien sûr, moi aussi, bien sûr. Alors voilà, encore, le thème de ce soir, c'est Tupaya, et il est de Raʻiatean, c'est un navigateur, et par rapport à ce que nous comprenons, il a aidé Cook à certainement découvrir pas mal d'îles qui se trouvent ici en Polynésie.
Oui. Kane hualani, alagawa. Ka hoku ho kahi hele ki alalu. Alaha kama kuku kapa ka mahine. E mahine lohiu na nai ka makani. E makani lohiu haupu mai o loku e. Yo. So now I'm going to give it over entirely to Tua and to Hironui. I'll just be tracking questions when we need to. And so Hironui, shall I go to the next slide or you want to say?
Yes, please do.
Okay, and then Tua, what about Tua? Let's have Tua say something.
Yeah, Tua.
Hey, kia ora na tātou, kia ora. I'm really honored to be here tonight. Tupaia is such an amazing man who was here centuries ago, or maybe quite a long time ago, before we were even thought of. And what he was able to achieve in the eyes of the world was phenomenal. So in my role here is to support Hironui in the presentation, and wherever I can, I will jump in.
Great, awesome. So yes, please, the first slide. So I just wanted to once again make people understand that a lot of the research and the passion that as a Polynesian I have in regards to trying to understand my own identity stems from, of course, my passion for the va'a. So this is a very important image that I wanted to share, and so that we understand its significance in not just as a mode of transportation, but as a symbol for our culture. Alors, je voulais juste d'abord commencer à mettre en valeur le va'a, qui est un peu la source de beaucoup d'inspiration, beaucoup de motivation, de passion concernant nos recherches que nous faisons pour notre identité, ma quête d'identité. Et cette première image représente pas seulement le mode de transport que nos ancêtres avaient, mais également le symbolisme derrière de ce que c'est le va'a. So my first question, of course, will be to Tua. What does the va'a represent for you as a navigator? Alors, ma question, bien sûr, pour toi, c'est le va'a, qu'est-ce que ça représente pour toi?
Well, the vaca for many of the Cook Island people, not just myself, but a lot of the Cook Island people, has been a very, very strong part of our upbringing.
On le disait pour ceux des îles Cook, dont il fait partie, les Polynésiens, le va'a fait partie de leur... comment dire, ils grandissent avec le va'a, cette notion du va'a, vaca.
It's not only just a transporter or a means of travel to get from one island to another. For us in the Cook Islands, we have 3 vaca on the island of Rarotonga.
Alors, dans le symbolisme, bien sûr, il dit que ce n'est pas seulement un mode de transport entre îles, mais par exemple, à Rarotonga, il existe 3 va'a. Et il va expliquer.
But the vaca doesn't represent the canoe itself. The vaca is the community. It's a village.
Alors, le va'a, pour lui, c'est pas seulement et pas uniquement ce mode de transport, mais c'est une communauté.
So we have the vaca of Te Awatonga, we have the vaca of Takitumu, and we have the vaca of Puaikura, representing the communities of those tribes.
Alors, il disait qu'il y a 3 va'a. Il y a bien sûr Te Awatonga, Takitumu et Puakari. Is that right?
Puaikura.
Puaikari, qui représentent les 3, on pourrait dire, tribus qui existent là-bas.
So when you relate the vaca to the community, vaca doesn't just mean a canoe. It means a movement of people.
Alors, comme il disait, si tu comprends dans ce sens, le va'a, c'est pas seulement un transport, mais c'est le mouvement du peuple ou des personnes issues du village.
So in terms of navigation, and in terms of being a leader on the ocean, you also need to be connected to the community of the island and the land as well.
Et comme il dit, non seulement que tu dois être un navigateur à bord de va'a pour pouvoir traverser des océans, mais il faut que tu sois également ancré avec la communauté qui est sur Terre. Yes. And so, thank you.
Very important.
Thank you, Tua. And once again, acknowledging the values of the va'a is kind of the reason why we are here every Wednesday night sharing this ancestral knowledge. And alors, une des raisons que nous sommes là à partager ces connaissances ancestrales, bien sûr, c'est une rendre hommage aux valeurs du va'a. So we are all one people, and we say the people of the Pacific Ocean, but we are the people of the va'a. Voilà, nous sommes un peuple uni dans cet océan, mais un peuple du va'a. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So just once again, briefly, for those of you who are watching for the first time and want to understand a little bit, I put this map of the Earth on just to show our Pacific Ocean where we are living. And you can see it is a very, very, very big ocean. It's half of the size, as you can see, of the Earth. And it's the most vastest of space, water, that exists on our planet. Alors, j'ai mis cette carte pour que vous ayez une compréhension de l'étendue de l'océan Pacifique. C'est le plus grand océan et que nous habitons tous au milieu. And Tua, do you want to share anything about about this map? Just chime in if you want.
Yeah. If you have a look at the Pacific Ocean, way back when time began, there were no lines, there were no divisions, there was only one Ngati, and it was Ngati Pacifica. We were all one family, as you said.
Alors, comme il disait, quand vous regardez l'océan, il n'y a pas de ligne, il n'y a rien qui nous séparait, il n'y avait pas de ligne politique. Nous étions tous d'une seule famille, celui de cet océan Pacifique. Okay, moving on. And more specifically, of course, moving on to the next slide, please, Lilikalā.
Okay.
And of course, you know, as we acknowledge in the chant, and of course, paying tribute to those who pretty much share a lot of the same language and the culture, we are talking about the Polynesian Triangle. And this is, of course, for those of you who have not, who don't understand it, but in the north is Hawaii, in the east is Rapa Nui, which is Easter Island, and in the southwest is Aotearoa. And then you have a whole bunch of islands, and if you're right in the middle is where I live, Tahiti, right next to Cook Islands, where Tua is from. Alors, voilà encore, dans cette océan Pacifique, nous avons le triangle polynésien. Et bien sûr, c'est un titre qui a été donné parce que on essaie de rassembler toutes les personnes qui avaient les mêmes cultures, les mêmes langages. Et nous avons le triangle polynésien au nord, les îles, l'archipel de Hawaï. À l'est, Rapa Nui, qui est les îles de Pâques. Et bien sûr, au sud-ouest, il y a la Nouvelle-Zélande qu'on appelle également Aotearoa. Et tous les autres îles au milieu, bien sûr. Et nous sommes au milieu, Tahiti et Rarotonga. Ben voilà, on est au plein milieu. Okay, so the next slide, please. And once again, this is another map, and you can see a little bit more specifically the island nations that compose the Polynesian Triangle. But today, you know, that's once again something that was given to us that we're using today, but we actually include all the Pacific Island nations as one people in the Pacific Ocean. So, voilà encore un titre, comme ça vous pouvez voir plus spécifiquement les îles qui comportent le triangle polynésien, mais aujourd'hui, on considère tous nos amis et la famille au fait de cet océan, tous ceux qui sont dans le Pacifique. Okay, next slide. And then, of course, we will be talking about Tupaya and where Tupaya is from. That's right. And today, this is overseas country of France, which is French Polynesia. I live here on the island of Tahiti, which is the main island. And to the northwest of Tahiti, about a 45-minute plane ride is Raʻiatean. And so it's part of the Windward Islands. Et voilà, une carte, bien sûr, de la Polynésie française, 5 archipels, un étendu autant que l'Europe. Et moi, nous sommes à Tahiti. Et Tupaya est originaire de Raʻiatean, qui se trouve un envol de 45 minutes de Tahiti. OK. Moving on, next slide. Okay. Right. Okay, so I come back to the image of the Va'a to understand that this is the most advanced of technology that existed at the time. Our ancestors voyaged and pretty much discovered most of all the islands that you find in the Pacific Ocean. And we're very, very fortunate that Captain Cook was able to take some dimensions. And today we can see the sophistication of the technology. Alors, je reviens encore sur le Va'a. Le Pahi était bien sûr le plus moderne des technologies polynésiennes en ce temps-là, pour bien sûr de faire des grandes navigations à longue distance. Et que voilà, ce navire a été répertorié par le capitaine Cook. Et qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons les dimensions de ce Va'a qui mesure à peu près 30 mètres. So, Tua, did you want to add in anything about the voyaging, I guess you could say the expertise of the craftsmanship of this high technology at the time, maybe give a perspective in that sense?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have a look at the Va'a, the Pahi that the Tahiti had, but in the Samoan Islands, Tongan Islands, they had their style of canoe as well, and the Cook Islands became the crossroad, where the two versions of canoes traversed each other, they transited each other. But the technology and the concept behind it all, even though they were far apart, was all the same.
Alors, il disait, la technologie, dont l'architecture marine de ces Va'a, les Samoa, les Tongiens, avec une grande sophistication, enfin, une grande technologie, bien sûr, d'ingéniosité, ainsi que les Tahitiens, les îles Cook étaient entre eux, ils avaient une influence des deux côtés. Et là, ce que nous voyons, bien sûr, c'est le plus grand des navires de grande navigation tahitienne, hein, le modèle tahitien, qui était, on pourrait dire, les derniers à apparaître. Hein. So we can move on to the next slide. On peut continuer sur le prochain slide. And here you can see these are the dimensions. And we have a class here at one of our high schools that actually built it down, of course, not to the scale 33 meters long, but to, you know, I think it was 1/9 the size, so down to like 2 meters in length, which is a great accomplishment for the kids as a project. Hein? Alors, on a eu bien sûr les dimensions comme vous pouvez le voir et qu'une classe de lycée a pu construire un 9e la taille de celui-là. So once again, just wanted to share that. It's pretty cool. Okay. Did you want? Okay, we can move on. The next, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so with these Va'a, of course, this is just a map of the migration patterns throughout the I guess you could say we'll go through that just really briefly. Juste encore de l'immigration, bien sûr, des îles. La théorie prédominante est celui du fait que nos ancêtres arrivaient, on peut dire, de l'Asie et au fur et à mesure ils allaient vers l'Est. So this is one of the theories, of course, that is accepted by everyone today, as far as you know, the science of understanding migrations. So the Polynesian people, as you mentioned, would originate in this theory from I guess you could say from Asia, from Southeast Asia, and moving through many thousands of years towards the east. And of course, the estimates are like 200, 300 to 1300 AD will be the last islands to be settled. Will be, of course, Aotearoa. Alors, voilà juste une carte un peu on pourrait dire le processus de migration de nos ancêtres. Ils arrivaient de l'Asie et au fur et à mesure, ils allaient vers l'Est. Et dans les derniers, on pourrait dire entre 200 et 1300 ans après Jésus-Christ, la naissance d'Égypte, on voit les dernières migrations sur Hawaï, sur les îles Cook et bien sûr Aotearoa. Et bien sûr, nous nous trouvons là. Did you want to say anything, Tua? Tu voulais ajouter quelque chose?
Just briefly, you know, this didn't happen just over a brief moment of time. It happened over 7,000 years. And from the time that our ancestors left Southeast Asia, they came into Indonesia and it stopped for 2,000 years. Then the migration moved across to just to the Bismarck Archipelago, to the Lapita, and there was another 2,000 to 3,000 years stop. And during that time, all the genes were changing. Mm-hmm. So we started off looking very Mongolian, Southeast Asian, and as we mixed with the different genes, we started to look like who we look like now.
Mm. Alors, toi, bien sûr, le navigateur disait que ce processus de l'immigration ne s'est pas fait du jour au lendemain. Ça a pris plus de 7000 ans. Et qu'une grande migration de Taïwan vers l'Indonésie, après, il y avait un arrêt. Il n'y avait pas de migration pendant 2000 ans. Et après ça, se continuait vers ce qu'on appelle vers les îles Bismarck, où c'est le peuple de Lapita. Et là, ça a resté encore pour 2000 ans. Et après, un grand mélange des races qui se sont déroulées et de l'asiatique, plus sens, jusqu'à ce que nous regardons aujourd'hui. C'est bien sûr cette évolution qui s'est déroulée au travers de plusieurs milliers d'années. Right? Okay.
I have one thing to add. If we look here in Indonesia, there are these islands called Maluku. And the northernmost island of Maluku is called Morotai. like our island Molokai.
Mhm.
So, here from Maluku all the way across to the Hawaiian Islands, I think we've had some people going back and forth. And of course, all of us who love to sail, and in fact, Tua just got off a canoe, right? All of us who love to sail, we know that you don't just sail one way, you go back and forth. And so
Mhm.
I think this actually we were going back and forth the whole time. Yeah, that's one of my ideas.
Voilà, Lilikalā voulait juste ajouter qu'elle a pu visiter l'Indonésie. Elle a retrouvé une île qui s'appelle Molotai, qui ressemble beaucoup à l'île de Molokai qui se trouve dans l'archipel des îles hawaïennes. Et que, bon, on regarde, ce sont les migrations, les grandes migrations, mais beaucoup de allers-retours, beaucoup d'échanges qui s'est passé pendant ces milliers d'années. So yes, so once again, a lot of exchanging going on between all of these islands, understanding that these are just the biggest migratory patterns. And so we have a better understanding that the waves are going through. Alors encore, c'est une description des grandes de migration, les grandes migrations qui ont, et que les échanges continuent. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Of course, so if our people were able to find Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and Aotearoa, so our ancestors definitely were able to find, we believe, North America and South America. And so I wanted to add in this particular thing. And so acknowledging a lot of the research that were done by scientists, proving or disproving, or all of this is where we stand on as far as knowledge. And of course, that we're using to continue in further research. And so more and more findings within the last 10 years have proven that these hypotheses are most likely becoming truer, I guess you could say. And as we continue with this great fervent research on these migrations, I'm sure more and more people will be sharing that. And of course, we're here to learn from that. Alors, encore une disait, si nos ancêtres avaient découvert Hawaï, les îles de Pâques ainsi que la Nouvelle-Zélande, pourquoi pas avoir trouvé également l'Amérique du Nord et l'Amérique du Sud. Et on disait bien sûr, voilà, toutes les recherches qui ont été faites sur l'immigration, de plus en plus, nous retrouvons des preuves qui, bien sûr, voilà, on pourrait dire les preuves qui peuvent nous aider à comprendre mieux un peu ces immigrations. So, okay. And once again, we'll move on forward, unless you want to add in something, Tua?
Just very quickly, I've been asked this question time and time again, and it's been out there for a long, long time when people say, so did the Polynesians come from Asia or did they come from America? So my response was, we come from both, but not at the same time.
Alors, la question qu'il est posée, certainement beaucoup, comme il disait, c'est est-ce que les Polynésiens sont originaires d'Asie ou ils sont originaires d'Amérique? Et puis, il dit, ben, c'est possible qu'on est originaire des deux endroits, tout simplement, et que peut-être on est arrivé à différents moments. En tout cas, tout est possible, hein, donc les recherches ne sont pas effectuées. So, yeah, so anything is possible. But the thing is that we do exist in Polynesian in its own culture and its own tradition of maritime tradition. We can, of course, understand that. Alors, yes, sure. Thanks, Tua. Moving on. Alors, on continue.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so, once again, talking about research and talking about understanding, as I mentioned. So, just once again, wanted to share some of the latest research. Or it's been here around for a while, but understanding that the DNA of South American chickens can be traced to Asian chickens. And the DNA of sweet potatoes can be traced to South America. So sweet potatoes found in Tahiti, for example, we can trace it to South America. Alors, encore une fois, une des recherches, bien sûr, c'est celui du poulet et de la patate douce. Comprenons que le poulet qu'on retrouve en Amérique, ils sont des poulets asiatiques, et que les patates douces qu'on retrouve en Polynésie, dans le Pacifique, mais ils sont originaires de l'Amérique du Sud. Alors, un échange s'est déroulé. So we can see that there must have been, of course, this exchange between Asia and, of course, America, as you had mentioned earlier, Tua.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we went there, we left our chicken bones and we stole their kumara.
Alors, tout simplement dit, nous avons été jusqu'en Amérique, on a laissé des poulets et en retour, on a repris, les patates douces.
And also, the Inca word for sweet potato is kumara.
Kumara, exactly. Et,
Yeah. The word comes not from Polynesia. The word comes from the Inca. It's kumara.
And we use that word here as for, humara. We say humara in Tahiti, hein? And
Oui.
kumara. Yeah. And so le mot, comme disait le docteur Lilikalā, c'est kumara. Et ce mot est originaire de l'Amérique du Sud. Alors, le fait que nous utilisons ce mot dans notre langage polynésien pour bien que voilà, les origines, bien sûr, c'est l'Amérique du Sud. OK. All right. Moving forward.
Hey, here we go.
And another, of course, hypothesis or a lot of research being extensively done. It's about the human bird of Rapa Nui. Rapa Nui, of course, part of Polynesia, very, very Polynesian island. And we see this human bird, the form, the shape, and we find it in artifacts in Central and South America. And I saw one in Guayaquil in Ecuador. And so see some of the images that you can see from Peru and Panama. You see the same human bird that you would find in Rapa Nui. Alors, c'est encore une image, les recherches qui ont été effectuées sur l'homme-oiseau. Voilà, l'oiseau humain, on pourrait dire, on retrouve à Rapa Nui. On passe par la tradition, c'est un dieu qui est représenté Orongo, et qu'on retrouve sur voilà, des bijoux, voilà, des artisanales anciennes de l'Équateur, du Panama et du Pérou. Lilikalā, this is from you, of course. This is your research and stuff. Can you share a little bit more about your findings, just briefly?
Well, this actually comes from Thor Heyerdahl's book on art of Rapa Nui and South America. So I have been to Rapa Nui, I have seen these orongo. In fact, I have another slide I should send to you of this exact same kind of carving on Oahu at Moanalua Valley. So they had the Birdman there. The rock has been moved to Bishop Museum for safekeeping, but the design is identical. And so when you go to Ecuador, there's an island called Puna in the Bay of Guayaquil. And there's Puna Island, which of course is a Polynesian word, which means spring, right? Puna. They have these clay pots that with the Birdman design over here. And then in Panama, they have this design. And as we go different parts of South America, we see that. And of course, we're going to see that in North America too.
Voilà. Alors, encore, ça fait partie un peu à la base des recherches de Thor Heyerdahl, hein, le fameux scientifique qui a fait la traversée entre le Pérou et les îles de la Polynésie. Et là, bien sûr, c'est de voilà, faire cette comparaison, cette similitude. Lilikalā disait que le dessin de l'homme-oiseau, on le retrouve également sur l'île de Oahu, sur voilà, une sculpture de roche. Et que bien sûr, tout ce qu'on voit, par exemple, ce sont des œuvres artisanales anciennes qu'on retrouve, bien sûr, ces mêmes dessins qu'on retrouve en Polynésie, comme on le trouve en Amérique centrale et Amérique du Sud. All right, cool. Next slide. And this, once again, this is about the connection to North America. And the Chumash, the first nation, a tribe of the Chumash, which are based in Malibu, California. And so they have a va'a. Well, they have a canoe, I guess you could say, called a tomo'ola. And they're made of wooden planks sewn together. Alors, voilà, je fais encore référence à les recherches des hypothèses de cette connexion entre la Polynésie et l'Amérique du Nord. Et on voit la tribu des Chumash, Premières Nations, qui sont basées à Malibu, en Californie. Et que dans leur tradition, ils ont un va'a, voilà, une embarcation qui s'appelle le tomo'ola, qui est très similaire au mot de tumura. Hein? It's almost the same kind of word. Et bien sûr, ce va'a est comme c'est fait ici en Polynésie, ce sont des planches de bois qui ont été cousues ensemble et qui sont rattachées pour bien sûr construire cette embarcation. And so, as I mentioned, we have the same kind of marine architecture of sewing wooden planks together. And so having these similarities, overwhelming similarities, understanding that the Chumash are quite unique as far as their culture compared to other First Nations in the area. And having this particular canoe showcases the fact that there's a great possibility that this technology was brought over. Alors, encore une fois, le fait que ce peuple de Chumash était très unique dans la région, il n'y avait pas d'autres comme eux au niveau de leur culture et au niveau surtout de la construction de leur embarcation. On voit que cette technologie, nous pensons, était une technologie qui a été importée par les Polynésiens. So,
And of
what,
course,
yeah.
Komo'ola, or Komo in Hawaiian would mean to enter into life. And the canoe takes us to life in many different places. There's archaeological evidence about some early sites in North America, and especially along the West Coast, that have more Asiatic kind of bodies, and some would say more Polynesian. And so I think that we've have some Polynesians who have gone there to meet with our cousins.
Alors voilà, juste une explication vite fait qu'en hawaïen, c'est un passage à la vie, Komo'ola en hawaïen. Le rapprochement, bien sûr, de la langue, ce qui est important. Et dans la culture des Premières Nations, des Amérindiens, on retrouve pas mal de similitudes. Okay, so moving on, I see we're moving quickly. So the Chumash canoe itself, as you can see the planks, of course, sawn plants, and there's a comparison with the Gilbert Island canoe as well, and a Tahitian canoe is very similar. Voilà, on voit bien sûr dans les recherches qui proposent que les Polynésiens ont apporté cette technologie il y a plus de 400 ans avant l'arrivée de Columbus. Hein? So the theory, of course, is that the Polynesians arrived, according to the research that was done, like some 400 years before Columbus arrived in America. So we talk about who discovered America. That'll be one of the things that you could talk about. Voilà, on voit bien sûr les comparatifs, bien sûr, des différents va'a, comment est sa construction, bien sûr, et voilà, les similitudes que nous avons. OK, move on forward.
Hiro, in terms of the waka design, it's very, very close to the Micronesian as well.
Alors, notre navigateur, le Tua, s'est exprimé, bien sûr, que c'est très similaire également à l'architecture qu'on retrouve dans les îles micronésiennes. Exactement. Yes. Okay, moving on. All right, so this is the Chumash people that we met. And so just once again, acknowledging the voyage that we all took part of about 10 years ago. And it's moving on quickly, 10 years now since we've done this voyage around the Pacific. So I was honored to be able to navigate with Tua on with the Pacific voyages with a fleet of 7 va'a. And we did for 2 years, get a big figure 8 all across the Pacific, and coming into Malibu, where we got to meet firsthand the Chumash people. Alors, encore une photo de notre rencontre avec le peuple Chumash. Je faisais partie d'un grand voyage avec 7 va'a, dont bien sûr le navigateur était Tua, un des navigateurs, et que nous avons eu l'occasion, bien sûr, de rencontrer ce peuple. Yes. Did you want to say anything, Tua? No? We're good?
No, it's fine, but I'm sure I had black hair then.
Yeah, I have footage of that, so I'm sure I'll be able to share maybe next time. Me too. I think I have black hair too. Just kidding. Okay, so moving on. All right, so once again, now that was just to set up. It took us, just to understand a little bit in more. I guess to have a better perspective in what our ancestors accomplished, and we wanted to go through all of this because it's not I guess it's not a question anymore. Hokulea in 1976 was out to prove to the world that our ancestors were great navigators and they sailed with purpose. And today we're not on that quest of trying to prove that they were, but we're trying to find more about that heritage that they left us. So, alors voilà, cette première partie de la présentation, c'était pas seulement pour démontrer que nos ancêtres étaient des grands navigateurs, on le savait déjà, mais voilà, en 1976, Hokulea est arrivé pour essayer de prouver. Et aujourd'hui, on n'a pas besoin, parce que là, avec toutes les recherches qui se font, on comprend un peu mieux. Et aujourd'hui, on va au-delà et on va comprendre un peu plus l'histoire et la culture, etc. So, and so this comes up to where now we're going to get into the thick of things and understanding how the knowledge that we have today of Tupaya was acquired. And it was acquired because of a few visitors arriving to our islands. And I'm just going to once again showcase the chronological order of the visitors. Of course, we call them visitors, and there's a little spelling error there. Alors, bien sûr, nous allons parler de Tupaya et pour essayer de comprendre d'où est-ce que ces connaissances arrivent. Et voilà, sont arrivées parce que les visiteurs avaient un langage écrit. Et tandis que nos ancêtres étaient dans la tradition orale. Alors, voilà, je vais juste, ça c'est par ordre chronologique, les visiteurs qui sont arrivés dans nos îles pour les premières fois et les îles qu'ils ont découvertes. So once again, voilà, just wanted to once again acknowledge, of course, the research that was done and understanding that the visitors that arrived, they had a written language. Our ancestors had oral traditions. And so they didn't write anything. It was passed on from generation. The knowledge was passed on. And so there was at a certain point where, of course, a lot of the knowledge was lost. And the knowledge of Tupaya was lost and of who he was. And so this is just a brief chronological, I guess you could say, of the visitors and the islands that they discovered. And of course, moving on forward. Unless you wanted to add anything to it, no? We're good?
No. Yeah, carry on.
Gorgeous.
Le premier contact, this is of course a beautiful illustration that was in of I guess you can see the first contact, a European contact with Tahiti. So there's a lot of stories coming out that they think the English there, but a lot can say the Spanish were there before, and other people say that, you know, it's possible, but as far as having that interaction and where you can, you know, have the time to draw these particular illustrations showcases, of course, that the very meaningful contact was done accordingly by the English. And so having these kind of wonderful illustrations is just wonderful, of course. Alors, encore une fois, c'est bien sûr, il y a plusieurs théories de qui a découvert Tahiti en premier, en tout cas, mais peut-être on pourrait dire ceux qui ont le plus grand impact de pouvoir, par exemple, illustrer en détail les va'a et les coutumes et les traditions polynésiennes. Ben voilà, bien sûr, on hommage aux Anglais, qui sont ceux qui sont auteurs de cette illustration. Okay, so we can move on. Yeah, and so we're just going to go into history a little bit and real briefly. The Captain Samuel Wallace, and the reason why we want to talk about Captain Samuel Wallace is because he was probably the first European to meet Tupaya. Okay, so. But his arrival wasn't, you know, met with kindness, I guess you could say. The Polynesian islands are known for their hospitality. And unfortunately, when he arrived, he was met with 500 canoes and, of course, in battle. Yeah, so, voilà. Alors, on parle du capitaine Samuel Wallace parce que c'est le premier grand capitaine européen qui avait rencontré Tupaya et que lui, il est arrivé, hélas, il n'a pas été bien accueilli. Et dans la baie de Matavai, ici sur l'île du nord de Tahiti, voilà, en 1767, et il a été accueilli par 500 va'a. Okay, so of course, this is a little bit of history, of course, and understanding that 500 canoes, it's incredible to understand that, yeah, that there were 500 canoes on the water at one given time. You know, for us, it just, you know, that's incredible. Alors, juste encore une fois, de dire qu'il y avait 500 va'a qui se tenaient sur l'eau, c'est assez incroyable. Do you wanted to say anything to it?
No, you know, other than, you know, his ship was called the Dolphin, but if you have a look at the illustrations and I think the Tahitians, it was all about curiosity. And the English, or Captain Wallace, was intimidated by that. So the people of that time, the visitors of that time, needed to show their power, and which is why it ended up with this bloody war. And then gunpowder.
So who 500 canoes came to see this ship, the Dolphin, and who opened fire first? Was it the Tahitians or the British?
That remains a question, of course, unanswered. and as la question, I'm just going to translate both of you guys, okay, just really quickly. Yeah? Alors, comme le Toa disait, alors voilà, le dauphin, ce navire de guerre, il faut dire que c'est un navire de guerre qui est arrivé. Bien sûr, les Polynésiens sont très curieux et bien sûr, si on ne te connaît pas, il faut qu'ils montrent leur force, bien sûr. Alors, ils sont arrivés avec 500 barres. Et alors, la question de Lilikalā, c'est qui a tiré d'abord pour avoir enclenché cette guerre. And of course, yeah, that's something that, of course, we may never really know. Accounts, of course, have said that the British have retaliated or defended themselves, being, I suppose, threatened. But they easily won this battle because they had gunfire, while the Tahitians did not. Alors, voilà. La conclusion de cette rencontre violente, c'est que les Anglais avaient avec des fusils, avec des canons, tandis que les Polynésiens n'en avaient pas.
So you mean 500 canoes couldn't take down this one British ship?
Apparently, so that's once again war navigation, warfare tactics, and we understand that all you have to, if you look at the biggest ba'a with the chiefs standing on that, and that's what you would aim for, as far as and so maybe that's what happened. Encore une fois, la question s'est posée avec 500 ba'a, ils n'ont pas pu envahir le dauphin, qui était bien sûr un bateau, un navire militaire. Et après, c'est une stratégie de guerre. Si tu focalises sur les grands va'a avec les grands chefs et tu détruis ces va'a, certainement le reste va suivre. And Tua, did you want to add into anything like that?
Probably just to finish it off. I mean, just after all that warfare and conflict, they started to step away from each other, and then they became hospitable towards each other. They started trading, and then they started. Then it all came right.
Alors encore pour résumer les choses, peut-être après cette guerre, il est certain qu'il y avait eu une amitié parce que après les Tahitiens ont accepté So yeah, so understanding, of course, Captain Wallace was circumnavigating in research of the big continent. So it was a warship, of course, but he did need water and food. And yeah. So in essence, they needed each other. And so, yes. Alors voilà, ils avaient besoin quand même de l'eau et de la nourriture. And so this is where Tupaya is mentioned for the first time in the captain's log, about meeting the queen of the island, who is the high chief of, her name is Purea. And her consul is Tupaya. And so they were able to exchange water, of course. And then the Captain Wallace claimed the island of Tahiti as King George III island. So this is something that's written in the history books. Alors encore, il est arrivé bien sûr que le capitaine avait besoin d'eau, avait besoin de trouver quelqu'un sur place qui pouvait faire cet échange d'eau et de nourriture, et qu'ils ont rencontré la femme du chef Amo, qui s'appelle Purea, et qu'elle avait à son côté un conseiller, Tupaya. And so this is where we find Tupaya for the first time. Okay, so moving on.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just once again wanted to mention that a few months later that the French arrived, and they also claimed Tahiti as French. Okay. And so, but of course they have illustrations at the same time, this is only a few months later. And of course, the French contributed to the myth of the noble savage. So this is once again part of history. And of course, we are a French island nation. And of course, there's a reason why we are French and we are not English today as far as being a colonized nation. And so I can get into more details about that later. But it was an exchange between the empires of France and British, where they both had claims also in New Zealand. And they, instead of ensuing a war between the two nations, they decided that the French could keep Tahiti, and of course the English could keep New Aotearoa. So that's what happened in a sense, okay? Voilà, alors juste pour te dire que voilà, Bougainville, bien sûr, également est arrivé sur Tahiti, et que c'est la raison que Tahiti est devenue une colonie française. parce qu'il y avait un échange qui s'est fait entre les Français et les Anglais, et que les Anglais ont gardé la Nouvelle-Zélande, et bien sûr les Français ont gardé Tahiti. Okay, so moving on.
Whoops, sorry.
So a lot of rich history being involved and talked about. Okay,
Well,
so
just one quick thing, Hiro, is when the British came to the Cook Islands, the captain at that time, and I can't remember his name, whether it was Captain Goodenough but they gifted a British flag to Makeʻeleihiwa, who was the queen at that time. And then they left, and they said they would be back. It wasn't long after that, a French ship came to the Cook Islands to do the same thing, to claim the Cook Islands for their own. So she saw them coming, she put the British flag up, thinking it was Captain Goodenough coming back, and the French saw the British flag and they left.
Ah, okay. So Samuel Wallace should have given them a flag after the Tahitians a flag. Alors, il disait l'histoire. Dans l'histoire, bien sûr, c'était dans cette période où les grandes nations européennes essayaient de, voilà, c'est l'empire, on pourrait dire, cette période d'empire, et que aux îles Cook, ils avaient la même chose. Les Anglais sont arrivés, et que le capitaine Goodenough avait donné un drapeau anglais et avait dit à la reine de l'île qu'il allait revenir. Et voilà. Alors, plusieurs mois plus tard, un autre navire est arrivé, et c'était les Français, sauf qu'elle croyait que c'était les Anglais, alors elle avait mis le drapeau, et que voilà, les Français. Okay. C'est pour ça, les îles Cook sont anglais, ils parlent anglais. So that's why you guys speak English.
Okay, exactly.
Okay, so moving on, and then of course, Captain James Cook is another person who wrote about extensively, wrote about Tupaya, and of course, everybody knows who he is. Of course, a lot of his research and a lot of what we know about Tahiti and of course the Pacific, we can thank the scientific expedition by Captain James Cook. Alors, le capitaine Cook est arrivé un peu plus tard, 2 ans plus tard que Samuel Wallace. Et que quand lui, il est arrivé, c'est bien sûr pour une expédition scientifique. Et bien sûr, il a contribué dans les 12 ans de 3 voyages pour la vaste connaissance que nous avons de nos îles de Tahiti, mais également du Pacifique. Et bien sûr, il était quelqu'un qui faisait des cartes. C'était reconnu mondialement pour les cartes. So once again, renowned in the world for his cartography. And all of this, of course, makes sense to why we're coming up to, of course, Tupaya. So once again, setting up things, yeah. So, okay, continue, moving on. Voilà, on continue. Oh, this is the French translation, of course, of the presentation. And so, voilà, tout simplement, c'est pour dire qu'il est arrivé dans une expédition scientifique. So I kind of made it just so that your classes can once again, gather the information and then moving on, okay? So, move on. Okay, and of course, very important, on board of that first expedition, Cook was Joseph Banks, who became president of the Royal Society, very, very important naturalist. He was a botanist and is the sponsor of this expedition. And of course, responsible for the extensive collection of flora of Tahiti, over 3,000 species throughout the Cook's first voyage that he collected. And of course, he wrote extensively about Tupaya. Alors voilà. Et l'autre personne que nous avons recueilli les informations sur Tupaya, c'est Joseph Banks, qui lui était un botaniste, le parrain de l'expédition, et qui lui rassemblera plus de 3000 espèces de flore de Tahiti, et bien tout au long du premier voyage de Cook. So he was responsible for a lot of the things that we know about Tupaya. Okay, so moving forward. Yeah, and of course, in the history of things, this is something that, of course, that I added in, is that when Captain Cook came, he met Tupaya, but Tupaya wasn't, I guess, of the same standing that he was in Samuel Wallace's arrival. And so when Samuel Wallace arrived, Tupaya had a more prestigious, I guess, role as being a counsel to the Queen. And when Captain Cook arrived, he wasn't the same. It wasn't the same case. And so just to understand that after the battle lost to Samuel Wallace, the chief at the time lost, I guess you could say, all of his mana. And so then he was, of course, replaced by another chief called Tutaha, who had in his ranks Pomare. And of course, Pomare will become the first king to unite the islands. And so, of course, starting off the Pomare destiny. So this is, once again, part of our history, and just so that people understand. Alors, encore une fois, juste pour revenir un peu sur le fait que, voilà, quand Tupaya, quand il était, pour la première fois, il avait un rôle important au sein de la chefferie, et qu'après la défaite de la bataille contre Wallace, ben, le chef en ce temps, Amo, avait perdu son mana, on pourrait dire, avait perdu un peu tout son pouvoir, et c'est Tutaha qui est devenu le grand chef. Il avait parmi lui un petit chef qui s'appelait Pomare, et qui deviendra plus tard le grand roi, on pourrait dire, dans sa dynastie royale de Tahiti. And so, yeah, so Tupaya was a guide, became a guide to cook. And so there were 4 guides that were hired, and he was one of them. Alors, Tupaya était devenu un guide pour le capitaine Cook dans ce voyage. Okay, so we're moving forward. All right, and so this comes to the title of the Tupaya, the Forgotten Navigator. And I have to say that because as far as a Tahitian growing up here in Tahiti, Tupaya wasn't a name that was known to everybody. And that, of course, begs the question, why? Why not? Of course, we know about him a little bit today, but I could say 20 years ago, I had no idea who Tupaya was. And so he's not part of our culture. And so he was a navigator that was forgotten. Alors, moi, j'ai mis ce titre, c'est pour peut-être essayer de faire comprendre à tout le monde, en tant que Tahitien, quand j'étais à l'école ici, ben, on ne parlait pas de Tupaya, on ne savait pas qui était celui-là. Et même dans les livres d'histoire qu'on avait, ben, on ne savait pas qui était ce monsieur. Alors, c'est un navigateur que nous avons découvert plus tard, très, très récemment, et que moi, je l'appelle le navigateur oublié. And of course, we have to ask the question, why did we don't have extensive knowledge in the culture, Tahitian culture, of who Tupaya was, you know? And of course, I'm acknowledging all the books or the captain logs and all of those who contributed to get information about Tupaya. But as far as us as Tahitian people, he was not part of our culture. Alors, encore une fois, c'est faire la compréhension de pourquoi Tupaya ne faisait pas partie de notre culture et qu'on ne parle pas de lui. Hein. Toi, do you want to add in, chime in regards to my thought process?
No. I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, right through the whole process of learning navigation, Tupaya was very rarely mentioned as an example of how amazing our ancestors were. And it wasn't until, what do you say, within the last 5 years?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. More extensively in the last 5 years, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of research that was being done, but of course it wasn't brought out to light, especially for us who are Tahitian. And if he is from Tahiti, it would have been nice to know that a few years ago. Alors, comme je disais, voilà, les dernières recherches qui se font les dernières 5 années, en plus approfondies pour mieux comprendre qui était ce personnage. Et comme un Tahitien grandissant ici à Tahiti, ben, c'est dommage qu'on n'a pas cette information, on n'a pas eu cette information. It would have probably changed a lot of our perspectives about our life and who we are, for sure. Okay, so moving forward.
Okay, because we're changing the way our young people look at ourselves. And I want to say tonight in Hawaii, there's a beautiful ATUA moon outside my window. I've been just amazed by watching it rise. You know, and it's ATUA, our elements or our ancestors, and they teach us. And so tonight they're teaching us through you folks, telling us about Tupaya, this wonderful, amazing person who wasn't just a guide, he was a teacher for Cook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alors, le docteur Lilikalā voulait juste dire que du fait que nous apprenons quelque chose sur Tupaya, ben, on regarde la lune, une lune, on pourrait dire, qui est parfaite pour ce genre de partage de connaissances, et que les éléments, bien sûr, c'était nos ATUA, ce sont nos divinités, et qu'ils sont présents parmi nous et qui nous donnent cette opportunité de se reconnecter à cette connaissance, se reconnecter à nos ancêtres. So it's true. Okay, so Tupaya, so the knowledge that was collected, and of course there's a few books that have been written about Tupaya, and so just briefly, he was considered a Tau'ahi. So this is a high priest of the marae of Tupaya in Opua, Raʻiatean. So consider the domain of the Ariʻi Tamatua. So I've written these things down because it's very important for people to understand. Okay, upon arrival of the first European, of course, you know, it's been through a few hundred years of evolution in our Polynesian society. And at the time, Teuatanui or Teuatakiri is a very, very important figure in Polynesian society as being the high priest. That was connecting the Ariʻi, the gods, to the people. And he was one of those people. Tupaya was one of a Teuatakiri. Alors, comme je disais, j'ai mis ça parce que mieux comprendre que Tupaya, ça c'est une des choses que nous avons découvertes, c'est qu'il était un grand Teua, hein, du marin de Tupaya, qui n'est pas n'importe quel marin. En ce temps-là, bien sûr, à Opua Raʻiatean, c'était considéré le berceau, on pourrait dire, de la navigation traditionnelle, et bien sûr sous le domaine de Ariʻi Tamatua. Okay, so Tamatua also is a high chief title that was given to those who ruled, would say, the most important part of Polynesia, as you saw, Raʻiatean, as in the sacred island, Opua, and the marae, the religious site of Tupaya, known throughout all of Polynesia as being the center, I guess you could say, of this particular, I guess you could say, understanding, or religion, of gathering of information, of navigation. Et encore une fois, c'est le centre de rencontre des connaissances au niveau autour de la navigation, parce que les prêtres étaient tous des grands navigateurs. So Tupaya was a great navigator, and that's because he was a toga. So you want to share a little bit more about that, what it means of being a toga and a navigator, Tua?
Well, see, this is where his brilliance came out when he was on these ships, is that with Captain Cook and all the others, they had a chart, they would cite, they would mark, and then they would put it on a map. And it was all about their ship going to the island. With Tupaya, he had a whole different concept. He measured how high the sun was at noon, and then he made his world all around that. So the canoe didn't go to the island came to the canoe. Was the concept that he had. And go ahead.
Alors, de comprendre, bien sûr, c'est de comprendre sa brillance, comme disait Tua. C'est que le navigateur de Tupaya était une personne hors norme, en comparaison au navigateur européen qui mesurait l'angle du soleil, qui écrivait les données et qui se situait de cette manière. Tandis que Tupaya n'avait pas ce genre d'instrument, il n'avait pas du tout d'instrument, et il regardait le ciel, et que le ciel autour de lui, c'était son, on pourrait dire, son médium scientifique, pour après comprendre que c'est pas lui qui allait à cette destination, mais c'était que la destination venait vers lui. Alors, un concept complètement différent de ce que c'est que la navigation. So, yeah, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and that's how he was. So the other thing was, he would recite chants. So as he's reciting a chant from what he had learned from his tupuna, it was giving him instructions on what star to look for, where the sun would be, and where the next island would be, based on these chants. And because, as you said earlier on, we only had an oral culture, we didn't have a written culture.
Mm-hmm. Et encore l'autre brillance, on pourrait dire, de Tupaya, c'est en tant que prêtre, c'est qu'il avait les connaissances des chants généalogiques, mais également des chants de navigation. Pour comprendre que les Polynésiens avaient une tradition orale, ils n'écrivaient rien, tout était par mémoire, et que pour trouver une destination, ils chantaient. Et c'est comme ça qu'ils pouvaient se rappeler des îles et des destinations, et bien sûr le comportement de la nature tout autour. And in the chants, of course, they had all the signs needed to find the destination, whether it is the currents, the animals that you would see, or how the wind blew and everything. It was all in the chants. And that's how he would find, well, the destination would find him, of course. Hein. Et voilà, et tout dans les champs, on avait tous ces éléments qui décrivaient dans le champ afin que la destination le retrouvait. Okay, so moving forward, yeah, I guess we can move forward. So, Raʻiatean. So I have to talk about Raʻiatean because it's not only a very special island, because it is the island of my ancestors. And so it's, and of course for Tupaya being originally from Raʻiatean, and that's one of the first things that we did as a nonprofit organization, it was to find out who are the families who claim descendants of Tupaya. Okay, so, alors bien sûr, on peut parler de Raʻiatean parce que il est né à Raʻiatean, c'est ce qui a été dit. Et bien sûr, prêtre de Tupaya sur Opua, alors il fallait qu'on retrouve les familles qui disaient qu'ils étaient descendants de Tupaya. Alors, on s'est rendu à Raʻiatean avec notre association Haururu. So we gathered around with our nonprofit Haururu, which I'm part of, the nonprofit cultural organization. And of course, we were extended an invitation to the Tuia 250 Festival in Aotearoa. We were going to honor maritime heritage of Cook, of English, and of course of Polynesians through Tupaya. And so upon that invitation, we said, well, okay, we're not just going to go there and say, hey, yeah, we're Tahitians. No, we wanted to actually bring out new knowledge about who Tupaya by seeking the families who claim their descent from Tupaya. Alors voilà, alors dans la préparation pour le Tuia 250, c'est un grand festival que les Maoris ont organisé en honneur, en hommage aux traditions maritimes des Européens, mais également des Polynésiens, donc bien sûr Tupaya. Alors nous, au niveau de l'association Haururu, nous avons décidé d'aller à la rencontre des familles qui, bien sûr, disent qu'ils sont descendants de Tupaya. And so, you can move next slide, yeah. And so just I wanted to share briefly some of the knowledge that we acquired, and I think that's why most people are here to understand that, of course. Is to understand what we found, and it's something that will be written very shortly as we are still continuing to study the genealogies. Alors, encore une fois, c'est une recherche qui se fait couramment en ce moment, que bien sûr les gens sont très, très intéressés à comprendre, bien sûr, et dans ces généalogies, nous allons bien sûr pouvoir, alors, here's the main thing. Okay, this is a beautiful image of what represents Raʻiatean, ancient name was Hawaii. And as you can see, the fe'e is the symbol that represents not just this, this way of living or understanding, but as the extension of the tentacles throughout all of the main islands, Polynesian islands of the Pacific, makes that connection that we had in the past. This is a representation of the symbol of our people with the fe'e. Alors encore, ça c'est un symbole, bien sûr, de notre rattachement, des tentacules qui se connectent avec tous les archipels polynésiens, et au centre, nous retrouvons bien sûr Hawaï, qui est l'ancien nom de Raʻiatean. Did you want to add something to that too?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Alors, so just real quickly, the research that we found is we actually questioned 5 families. So the kupuna, the tupuna, and the eldest, those who have the acquired knowledge of the family history and the genealogies, of course, that claim that they are descendants of Tupaya. So we met 5 families in Raʻiatean and in Taha. Okay. Alors, voilà, dans cette recherche que nous avons fait, nous avons rencontré 5 familles qui disent qu'ils sont descendants de Tupaya, qui se trouvent sur l'île de Raʻiatean et de Taha. Okay, and I'm not going to go through what everybody said and everything like that, but what we found, and we realized that there was a strong possibility that there are many Tupayas. Okay, so the one that we're talking about is the Tupaya, maybe the last Tupaya known to everybody, but according to them, there are probably several Tupaya. Okay, and so that came to, of course, with our experts of cultural knowledge, to the understanding that Tupaya wasn't a name, but it was a title. Okay, so that was the first finding that we had, understanding that Tupaya was a title. Like Tamatoa of Ari'i was a title for the chiefs of Taputapuatea. And the To'anui, of course, the To'ahei of Tapu Tapu also had a title, and the title was Tupaya, which makes so much sense. Okay, and so each family had their genealogy. Each family had stories saying that Tupaya traveled and went around the whole Pacific, and some even claimed that they had already been to Aotearoa and back, and all these things. And we were just like, okay, we're just gathering the knowledge, and of course, understanding that at the end we're going to say, okay, Tupaya was a title, and he's associated to Tautu as far as a family name. Tupaya et Tautu is the same. Okay? Et là, bien sûr, l'information que nous avons compris, c'est que Tupaya, avec les différentes généalogies, on comprenait que Tupaya pouvait être plusieurs personnes, tout simplement. Et que Tupaya, c'était un titre de prêtre. Comme Tamatoa est un titre de chef pour Tapu Tapu Atea, Tupaya était un titre de prêtre. Et qu'il y avait plusieurs histoires. Chaque famille avait une histoire de Tupaya qui a navigué déjà en Nouvelle-Zélande, qui a fait plusieurs navigations et qui avait tout autour de cette connaissance de la navigation traditionnelle. And so once again, he was, for all five of them, 5 families, he was a navigator. He was a title that was given as a priest for Tapu Tapu Atea, as a priest of a navigator, a master navigator. Okay, so if this kind of knowledge was passed on from generation to generation or between families and things like that, what was not conclusive for us is that we couldn't pinpoint the genealogies to the date that supposedly Tupaya was born on. So that's why we're like, oh, wow. Alors, bien sûr, avec toutes ces généalogies, nous essayons de voir quelle est la famille ou quelle généalogie qui représente le mieux par rapport à la date d'où normalement il est né. And so that is some of the information that we gathered and that we're still analyzing. And of course, it gives us a bit better understanding as far as being a Polynesian in the cultural sense. And so that's some of the information I wanted to share tonight. Encore une fois, c'est les recherches qui ont été effectuées et qui continuent à être effectuées a pu bien sûr apporter cette première conclusion qu'il y avait plusieurs Tupaya, que c'était un titre et que cette famille de Tupaya est également associée à la famille des Tautu. Et donc tout ça, bien sûr, dans les généalogies que nous avons trouvées. You guys have any questions about the things that I just shared about? Because for us, it's important to understand that, okay? Voilà. Okay, on va continuer.
I'd just like to add, Hironui, that this slide comes from Peter Buck's
book, yes.
His book, and this is a drawing that came from Vikings of the Sunrise. But I love to show it to my students because the 8 legs of the E'e go north and south and east-west, which are cardinal directions for anybody who's sailing, but also they go diagonally. In Hawaii, we say it's sailing by the manu. So you're going to sail diagonally so that you get a faster thing from the wind, right? So that idea of this being not only a representation of the sailing paths from Raʻiatean, Hawaii to Hawaii Iluna is very, very much put into our psyche. It's part of what we know as Polynesians. And then when we see this, we can say, oh, Te Whaenui, we feel really comfortable with this because that's the way we've traveled, So I love this drawing.
Voilà, alors juste le Dr. Lilikalā voulait partager bien que cette image est issue bien sûr du livre des Vikings, voilà, et que sur le dessin, elle enseigne en classe que on regarde bien les tentacules et on voit les cardinaux, les points cardinaux, qu'on retrouve bien sûr le nord, le sud, l'est et l'ouest, mais également ce qui est en diagonale, et pour démontrer bien sûr les 8 points, les 8 tentacules, les 8 sections, les 8 trajets ou les espaces du temps que nous avons sur une carte, mais également par rapport à notre vision des choses. Okay. All right.
Okay, and moving along. Oh, we have to see where we're going. Okay.
Yeah. Great, awesome. Yeah. So once again, Tapu Tapu Atea, for those who've never been to Tapu Tapu Atea, this is the site that's being on the list of the heritage sites of the United Nations. And so as of 2 years ago now, it's been listed. And of course, Hokulea has been to this site many times, and so has Dr. Lilikalā. So, once again. Alors, voilà, pour ceux qui n'ont jamais été sur l'île Raʻiatean et qui n'ont jamais aperçu le marais de Tupaya, voici une image sur le site qu'on appelle Tepo. Et le Tupaya que nous avons bien sûr est reconnu pour être dans la liste du patrimoine mondial. Et ça, c'est important de bien sûr le comprendre, et que nous avons bien sûr, voilà, on peut dire ce prestige de reconnaissance, parce que le Tupaya, c'est voilà, on peut dire le dernier grand marin, et le fait que Tupaya faisait partie était le responsable de ce marin. And once again, Tupaya was the priest of this marin. Okay, so for it to be not only listed as a heritage site, is to understand why the significance, because Tupaya exists in many different islands. I believe in Rarotonga there's a Tupaya, right? In Whakarava there's a Tupaya. In Nukuhiva there's a Tupaya. On Oahu there's a Tupaya. So all of these different these sites having the same name has contributed for, of course, for Tupaya being on the list of a heritage site. And I was the person who was responsible for the film that was, of course, introduced to the United Nations to, of course, convey this message. And voilà. Alors, juste encore une fois, bien la compréhension de pourquoi Tupaya a été mis sur la liste de l'UNESCO, c'est tout simplement parce qu'il y a une étendue, il y a un lien avec d'autres Tupaya qui existent. Si c'est aux îles Cook, si à Hawaï, sur Whakarava, Nukuhiva, on voit l'étendue de ce que ça représentait et qui fait voilà, qui donne une lumière plus approfondie sur notre culture. Voilà. Okay? So, you wanted to add anything?
All good.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm once again really thankful for Tua to be here with me tonight. He's a good person to have as far as ancestral knowledge and having that perspective of a navigator being so close to the elements and nature. And I'm once again just very passionate in learning, wanting to learn more and more and more. Encore un grand merci à la présence du navigateur Tua, qui nous apporte un soutien au niveau de la perspective du navigateur et d'être si proche des éléments, bien sûr. Okay, so we're moving forward, moving on.
Oui.
Once again, this is another, yes, once again, widely considered university for maritime knowledge. Encore voilà, une théorie qui est basée sur pas mal de faits. So once again, alors nous avons le site et par rapport aux marins qui sont construits, par rapport à la navigation, établi bien sûr que c'est un site, on pourrait dire une université des connaissances maritimes. So if I believe that the priests who were from Tupaya would have been able to navigate to many different Tupayas. If we consider this center of knowledge, center of maritime knowledge, somewhat of a religion based on thousands of years of tradition, maritime heritage and tradition, you would see that navigators would know or have knowledge of different places where Tupaya existed, and this knowledge would be shared, and then believe that everybody would bring back this knowledge to this area. Alors encore, sachant que les prêtres des Tupaya étaient des grands navigateurs et qu'ils allaient établir leur Tupaya dans le Grand Pacifique avec les échanges qu'ils avaient, les connaissances qu'ils avaient acquis, qui revenaient sur place pour le partager. Okay, moving forward, moving next.
I want to say that when I get to talking about temples in a couple of weeks from now, I'm going to introduce temples, that this wall is 0 degrees north. And it's a wall that's used to measure where the sun rises at winter solstice, at equinox, and at summer solstice. And in Hawaii, there were 3 Tupayas, one on Kauai, one on Oahu, and one on Molokai. So we were used to this idea of having this wall that's 0 north. When we get to that, I'll be telling you how you can figure that out without having.
Yeah, I'm going to be there on Friday, so just to let you know, I'm going to be there again in Tupaya on Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same thing with Tupaya in Rarotonga. The lineup is north, south, east, west as well.
Yes, that's right.
Alors, on regarde bien sûr Malia de Tupaya, dont l'explication du docteur Lilikalā, elle est alignée, ce grand mur, ce grand ahu est aligné nord, 0 degré, nord-sud. Et en regardant, on se positionnant sur les dalles, ou bien sûr, si tu pouvais en fait mesurer, enfin, tu pouvais tracer le chemin du soleil dans le ciel, si c'est au lever, au jour le plus long, au solstice, au l'équinoxe, on pouvait le tracer sur ce marin. Et qu'il y a 3 autres Tupaya dans la même configuration qui existe sur les îles Hawaï. Et que voilà, et là, ATUA, bien sûr, nous confirme que également sur Rarotonga, il y a un Tupaya qui est aligné de la même façon. Et bien sûr, moi, j'ai l'hommage de pouvoir rentrer sur Raʻiatean un vendredi. So I'll be there Friday. Just to let you guys know, not to make you jealous or anything like that. Okay.
I can tell you, Hironui, or would like to convey to our audience, this area here is called Te Po, and if you go to this side, it's Te Ao. And this is the dividing line between Te Po and Te Ao. For Hawaiians, that's important because we say all knowledge is mai Te Po mai. And so this area being called Te Po is like a source of knowledge in our chants and in our discussions of ancestors. So that link between us.
Alors, dans l'explication du Dr. Lilikalā, dans les études, bien sûr, c'est pas une étude, mais c'est un fait que voilà, la Terre, le site est divisé en fait. Il y a le Te Ao d'un côté et Te Po de l'autre côté. Et Te Po, c'est là où se trouve le marin. Et c'est là en fait où on récupère les connaissances en fait. Et c'est ça qui est important à comprendre, que c'est un endroit où on récupère les connaissances et plus particulièrement pour la navigation traditionnelle, bien sûr. Okay, great. So moving forward. Okay, and so we see Tupaya, and of course, we understand that Tupaya was originally from Raʻiatean, and he had left for some reason, of course, and according to the books that we've written or that have been written, the reason why he left Tupaya is because he was, of course, over. I guess you could say they lost a battle for the warriors of Bora Bora. And so in Bora Bora, they had the saying of the elite warriors that paddle without making any noise. Te Hiwe Mamu is the name of Popora Te Hiwe Mamu. And so this battle between the tribes of Bora Bora and Raʻiatean happened quite a few times. And the last battle had the people from Raʻiatean losing, and where Tupaya would be, of course, injured and being responsible for I guess you could say, the most sacred artifacts on the Mara. He left Raʻiatean and sought refuge in the southern part of the island of Tahiti in Papara. And there, of course, is where we have the story of Wallace and everything like that. But I'm just going to translate. Alors, là, vous avez le Mara de Mahayatea, que Tupaya a fait visiter à Cook, et c'est dont il est, on pourrait dire, un des responsables. Alors, la question qui s'est posée, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Pourquoi est-ce que Tupaya a quitté Tupaya pour arriver sur Tahiti? Alors, ils ont perdu la guerre, une guerre entre les tribus de Bora Bora et ceux de Raʻiatean, où Tupaya était, bien sûr, avait perdu. Il était même blessé de cette guerre, et qu'il a fui Tupaya en prenant avec lui tout ce qui était le plus sacré, représentation bien sûr de Oro, et puis refuge sur l'île de Tahiti, dans le sud, dans la commune de Tevaluta ou Papara, où bien sûr se trouve ce marin. And so just coming back to Mara of Mahayata, that's part of my middle name. My name is Hironui of Mahayatea. So this is a very, very special Mara in the sense that my grandmother gave me this name. And my sister's name is Te Halitua Teriirere. And of course, Teriirere is the name of the son of Purea and Amo, and what this particular structure was built after, or in name of. And so according to the research that has been done, they're saying that Tupaya is responsible for the construction of this mara, which at the time is supposedly the biggest mara that was ever constructed. Alors voilà, on revient sur Mahayatea, ça fait partie un peu de mon prénom tahitien, et que celle aussi de ma sœur, et que Tupaya, dans ce qui a été recherché, est responsable pour la construction sur le marin, et que bien sûr, en tant que guide de Cook, a fait visiter. So moving forward, and
Music.
okay, and so here, this is the site of Mahayatia today. And this is a video drone footage that I've taken of the site. So there's a big mound that you see with the trees. That is where the ahu was. And so the ahu was claimed to be 10 stories high, which reflects kind of like the 10 skies that we have in some of the ancestral knowledge that we've acquired. And so this is what's left of the site. And understanding that when the missionaries arrived, they actually, broke down the site, and a lot of the stones that were used to build roads and structures and walls and bridges and things like that, which, it's blasphemy actually. And so as a Polynesian, understanding that our most sacred site was after destroyed to be used, rocks were being used for other, that's kind of like, I would say, bad luck. Yeah. And Papara is known to have a lot of bad luck. And we say that in regards to the car crashes on the road, or a lot of the deaths that we have that are unexplained. And so once again, this is all, I guess you could say, the urban myths or whatever you want to say it, but this has some kind of contribution to a lot of people's beliefs. Yeah? The fact that this was destroyed and the stones were used, stones that are sacred, were used to build other structures. And of course, alors voilà, voici une image que vous voyez du marin de Mahayatea aujourd'hui. Cette petite colline que vous voyez avec les arbres, en fait, ça c'était le ahu, qui était représenté par 10 étages, le plus grand qui existait en ce temps-là. Et qu'avec l'arrivée des missionnaires, et bien sûr, l'évolution pour l'idée de la société, elle a été détruite, et la structure, surtout les pierres, ont été utilisées pour aller après construire d'autres structures. Et bien sûr, on dit que ça porte malheur, etc., etc. Et alors, je ne peux pas dire que ça a un lien direct avec les accidents pour les trouver, ou bien les choses qui se passent dans le district. Mais bon, voilà ce qui se dit et que les gens croient aujourd'hui. Okay? So, you guys have any questions about that? Because I know I see that we're coming towards the end. Yeah, so this is just footage of the area, and you can see it's right next to the water. Understanding that before there was a beach in this area, and he said that the marae would extend out. The area, of course, would be a lot bigger. Yeah, and of course, it's aligned accordingly, as we had mentioned before. And the wall, as you follow the wall, it'll go all the way straight to Raʻiatean. Just as we mentioned last time, we talked about this site with Libor. Okay. Alors, voilà, une des choses que nous avons découvert, bien sûr, c'est que l'alignement du ahu était en plein sur Raʻiatean. Et bien sûr, avec les astres, enfin, avec les corps célestes également. Alors, on comprenait bien sûr dans l'architecture qui était bien sûr dédiée et construite par Tupaya. Okay, so we can visit it today, and this is what it looks like. And so we know it's an edifice that was raised to honor also Oro, Oro, which is the god of war, because of the shape of the stones. They're quite round in shape, and they're about this size, and they had a lot of them stacked, and you could see that. And that's one, according to our specialist archaeologist, Papa Tumu, we'll get to meet, who's Mohono. And so he said, of course, this makes so much sense that Tupaya, who was also a priest of Oro, would have built this place. Yeah. Okay. Alors, encore une preuve du fait que par rapport aux études archéologiques, que les pierres qui ont été utilisées pour construire le marin et les murs étaient bien en rond, en forme, et qu'il s'est indiqué bien sûr que c'était un marin qui représentait qui était honoré le dieu Oro, le marin Oro, et que bien sûr Tupaya était un prêtre, était un toa de Oro. Alors c'est dans le lien qu'il fait, et pour dire pourquoi il serait la personne qui aurait construit cet endroit-là. Okay?
So I have a question, Hironui. You were saying that because of the round stones that are, it's actually oblong, yeah, that are carved.
Exactly. Round shape.
That represents Oro. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I had heard that this place, Mahayatea, was also used for Ruahatu, Is that not correct, or maybe that was
I'm actually, I don't know. You probably have to ask Mo'ono. We'll probably ask them together.
okay?
To my understanding, it was erected in honor of Oro, of course, but for, I guess you could say, for Ter'irere, who was going to be the next chief. And so they knew something. And so, yeah, and so Ter'irere, of course, is the son of the chief Amo, who lost the war to Samuel Wallace, and Purea, who had a higher ranking in regards to her bloodline, and who, of course, was thought to be the queen of the island when Samuel Wallace claimed Tahiti to be, of course, the island of King George III. Alors voilà, c'est un édifice qui a été érigé par Tupaya pour le fils qui s'appelait Ter'ire, le fils du chef Amo, qui avait hélas perdu cette bataille contre Samuel Wallace à l'arrivée, et bien sûr sa femme Purea, qui était bien sûr qui était la reine de l'île, et que Samuel Wallace a pour dire que c'était bien sûr l'île de George III. Okay, so moving on, and this is now believed that Tupaya, while he was on board of the Endeavour, his quarters were next to a lot of the illustrators. Yeah, and so being so close to these scientists and things like that, he according to the logs, he came up with being able to draw, in essence, with what they had. Yeah, and so another talent that he had that is being displayed. Of course, this is at the beginning of his experience with Cook, as you can see. And of course, as you see the images as we go further around visiting the islands, that they of course evolved, and you can see the masterpiece. And so this one in particular, you can see in detail what was in the area, this most sacred area, which is enclosed by the walls. So you can see the details of course, the different levels. Yeah, and of course, and the sticks that are sticking up, they're called unu, yeah, and they're unu representing, of course, different, that connection with, of course, with Tepo, which is the ancestors and the invisible world. Alors voilà une image un peu détaillée que nous découvrons que c'est Tupaya lui-même qui avait dessiné, étant à bord du navire de Endeavour avec les scientifiques, avec les illustrateurs, voilà, ceux qui dessinaient. Il a bien sûr pris lui-même le dessin, et lui-même avait dessiné le marin qu'il avait construit. Voilà. Okay. Pretty cool. So we're moving forward.
Very cool.
And then from Tahiti, they went on to Raʻiatean, where he was from. So Tupaya in Raʻiatean, and this is, as you can see, his penmanship has evolved. You can see more details in the flora and the trees that are there, the coconut trees, the huts, the whare that you can see, and of course, very specifically looking at the different va'a that was on display. As you can see, the va'a without the sails and the va'a with the sails. Yeah. Alors voilà, un deuxième dessin de Tupaya qui avait quitté avec Cook. Ils ont quitté, ils sont arrivés sur Pufao. Of course, I have video of showing the exact place where they arrived, and understanding that in Raʻiatean they stayed in the Bay of Pufao, which is right from the pass of Mirimiri, and of course on the west side where the sun of course sets, and understanding how to navigate into this small pass to get into the Bay of Pufao. According to the logs, that the captains and everybody was super impressed by his skills of navigation and understanding where everything was. And so of course, it was easy for him to say because he was coming home for sure. But this time he was coming home after being defeated. But to those of Bora Bora, he came home with, of course, an armada of arms, of course, in a different context, I guess you could say. And of course, in detail, you can see the va'a, and of course, some jousting going on. You can see a va'a with ta'i, with some sails and stuff like that. So really, really interesting to study. And of course, these illustrations are found at the British Museum. Alors, encore une fois, juste pour montrer que Tupaya, en tant que guide, a décidé d'emporter avec lui toutes ses connaissances et arriver dans la baie de Pufao, sur la côte ouest de l'île de Raʻiatean. Il a bien sûr dessiné cette image On voit en détail les différents va'a de guerre. Et là, il y a une simulation de guerre. Et bien sûr, un va'a taillé, un va'a motu, on pourrait dire, avec les voiles qu'on voit en rectangulaire et très, très spécifique par rapport à la l'architecture d'aujourd'hui. Et on détaille la flore qu'on peut retrouver sur le site qu'on appelle Poufo, parce que c'est là, au fait, qu'ils sont restés. Ils disaient que les navigateurs anglais n'ont jamais vu cette expertise, jamais vue auparavant, parce que la passe, elle est étroite, et de faire naviguer un voilier sans moteur à l'intérieur d'une passe comme ça, il fallait quand même une grande connaissance des lieux et surtout des vents et tout comme ça. So, once again, Tua, can you maybe share with us what it is to navigate without a motor into a pass for people who don't understand?
It's funny you say that. You have to be very, very skilled to be able to do that. You have to deal with the current that's coming in, the current that's coming across the side, and then you get the odd swell that's coming from behind you, and then you get the coral heads, and then you have to deal with the wind, and then you have to put the waka or the wa'a onto a beach safely. So, yeah.
But this is a big
skill that you have to have, and
in there.
Would be right there.
It wasn't just a canoe. He brought a big ship in through the pass.
Yeah.
It too. I mean, bringing in the end of her is just a whole different ball game, because for those of you from United Kingdom, I just want to apologize, but that's a bloody bubble. And it's hard to maneuver, but they did it good, which is all justice to his how good he was.
Alors, encore une fois, c'était une question que j'ai posée à notre navigateur invité ce soir. C'était quelle est la difficulté de pouvoir faire une navigation avec un bâtiment anglais qui apparemment n'allait pas très vite et qu'il fallait le faire rentrer dans une passe qui n'est pas très grande. Et bien sûr, arriver à terre sans problème, c'est ce qui a impressionné bien sûr les navigateurs anglais. C'est l'expertise de Tupaya et de pouvoir le faire avec un grand navire qui n'est pas le sien. Et bien sûr, de le faire merveilleusement, c'est une attribution de sa qualité de navigateur, de ses connaissances. Parce qu'il y avait les courants, il y a certains des courants, il y a des vagues, il y a les coraux, il y a toutes sortes de facteurs qui font en sorte que c'est assez difficile. And of course, a lot of the European navigators will never dare try to navigate on areas where, especially if you're under the wind, yeah? So you always go where there's more wind, so easy to maneuver. And so we're on the leeward side of an island of Raʻiatean, where the winds are pretty tricky or even sometimes non-existent. And so the challenge of course, of doing that even more so impressed the cook and his crew. Of course, pour ceux qui naviguaient auparavant, sans voile, c'est beaucoup plus dangereux d'être du côté sous le vent. Bien sûr, tu te restes toujours sur le vent pour que tu puisses faire de meilleurs naveurs, mais là, bien sûr, à l'ouest, sous le vent, bien sûr, c'est le grand challenge. All right. Okay. Oh, wow. It's already 8:40. Oh, my gosh.
You have to go because of the curfew?
Yeah, I have to get home. So yes. Okay, so yeah, I guess we should wrap it up now then, Lilikalā. I'm really sorry. I mean, we have more slides to go to, but I think next week when we have Tua speaking on behalf of navigators and understanding Tupaya's stars and things like that, we'll come into the rest of the islands. Yeah, so really interesting. Yeah, we'll come back to the map and everything like that. So this is great stuff that we're going to be sharing with everybody next time. So please come back. Alors encore une fois, nous avons, on pourrait dire, un couvre-feu et que moi je dois rentrer. Alors je voulais juste encore remercier tout le monde. Rendez-vous la semaine prochaine. Nous allons bien sûr nous parlons encore de Tupaya et avec Tua, qui sera bien sûr notre présentateur, et moi je serai bien sûr l'accompagner, et que nous continuerons cette présentation. Once again, thank you, Lilikalā. Go ahead and speak in English, and I said in French. Encore une fois, voici les sites. Un grand remerciement à tous les sponsors et encore à la semaine prochaine. Okay? Thank you, guys. I have to go.
No, because you're going to hear you. and Tua and I will wrap up. Okay, no worries.
And if there are any questions, because we can't see all the questions that come in, I'm sure it'll be really, really nice to hear from everybody, and if we can share some knowledge. And of course, that's the whole idea of this. Yeah. Encore une fois, s'il y a des questions, désolé, on n'a pas pu les répondre. Mais si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à l'envoyer, puis ils vont nous amener, ils vont essayer de répondre le plus tôt possible. OK? So, OK, thanks again. Merci encore. Lilikalā et toi, marurua. Thank you. Okay.
Before the gendarme catch you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Nana.
Aloha.
Hey.
Folks, for those of you still here, I'm just showing you that next Wednesday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. we'll be back. And Tua, talk to us about what you're going to show us.
Well, you know, we hear a lot about the history of Tupaya. We hear about Captain Cook and how amazed they were at the way he was. And we also hear about the jealousy that they had towards him because they said he was arrogant, but he wasn't arrogant. He knew what he was talking about. So I want to go into the savvy of this man and try and share that with you in layman's terms so that we can all understand what his navigational method was and how it relates to what we're doing now. And then I'll connect it to the stars of the Cook Islands and how we use the different stars of the Cook Islands to understand the different islands that we have there. But we'll touch on some of the maps that Tupaya has, and but come along, come and listen, and we'll make it as simple as possible so that even I can understand.
I see we have a note from Pauline Reynolds. She said Tupaya's watercolors are kept at the British Library, not far from the British Museum, kept in a folder. So if we wanted to go to England and see these things, of course, but being able to share them now and have them on screen for all of our students and our friends and our family to see, I think is really quite wonderful. I want to thank Hironui for that. So we'll see the rest of his maps and things. And then Tua, you're going to take it away with talking about how he navigated and then show us stars that you folks use in Kukiairani. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's you know, this knowledge is all here to be shared. And for those of you who take the time to come out and be a part of this whole hui is fantastic. So I look forward to catching up with you then.
As we just finish up, I want to thank, I want to say if you have other things that you want to tell us about, please go to this website for evaluation. And of course we have Malia, Nobrega-Olivera from Malea Nui, who's started off this series for us and let us go along with it. I seem to have lost my slide that thanks our techies, Kalani, Simeona, Lehuluwai Maka, Meleisea, are working behind the scenes to help us put this show on. And so I just like to thank Malia and Kalani and Lehuluwai Maka for helping us every time. It's just wonderful. Also, if you would like to make a donation to the Gladys Brandt Endowed Chair, this is the website that you can do so at. I know money is very difficult at this time, so I'm not expecting lots of things to come in. But if you know someone who has lots of money and they want a tax-deductible donation, this is a good place to put the money in so we can give more honorariums to all of our guests who come. So right next week, we're going to have Tua come up. And I just want you to know that we'll be on at 7 o'clock. And these are the places where you can look for us. This is our Zoom account, Brent Webb. And then we have Hawaii Nui Akea on Facebook. If you missed anything, you can go to this web, which is called the Brandt Chair, the bit.ly Brandt Chair. And then finally, after that, the following week, I'm going to start us off on temples. And we're going to start to talk about temples in Hawaii, in Tahiti, in Marquesas, in Kukiailani, and Tonga and Samoa. We'll do a whole slew. We're going to start a new thing on temples. So stay with us, everybody. Love to see all of you here. Aloha kako, yorana tatu. And I just want to thank Tua. You have the last word. Tell us how to say goodbye in Kukiailani.
Oh my goodness. Tamatiki e, tamarangi e, kapa i runga, kapa i raro. Kapa pai nā te rangi e. Ka rūta kina e. Ka mi mo. Whoosh. As we sail out to sea.
Okay, aloha. Aloha to all of you. Mahalo nui, Kalani, lehulu e Maka. That's all our show is for tonight. Aloha.